Hello, good morning everyone. It's Alison Ashley here from Quartix, from the account management team. Welcome to the Quartix webinar on fleet compliance with our partner FleetCheck. Today I'll be handing you over to our guest presenter from FleetCheck, Peter Golding, who is going to run through some of the compliance issues that I'm sure many of you will be facing. Peter will be demonstrating a quick and cost-effective solution which integrates with your Quartix tracking. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today, and I'm going to hand you over to Peter.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Alison, for the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity of speaking today. So a little bit of background. I am the founder and MD of FleetCheck. We've been operating now for over 12 years, and we work predominantly within the SME sector. So we work with fleets ranging anything from 5 vehicles well over 250 up to 1,000 vehicles. But the core of the organisations we work with, fleet management, is an area which often is shared amongst other tasks. The 3 key issues: time is always one of the big issues, and I appreciate all of your time today, because I appreciate, again, we all know the challenges of trying to fit everything in. The cost implications of running fleets come through as one of the key issues that come up time and time again. But clearly the purpose of today's call and what we're going to be covering off is your understanding of compliance. So we're going to go through some of those key areas. What I will say is when we talk about compliance, we've obviously got a lot of understanding of the pains and the challenges that you have, but we will also give you solutions to the problems as well. So it's not all bad. The introduction to start off with was talking about fleet compliance, and I'm going to go through, really just give you an understanding of your legal exposure and what you as an organisation need to know. As I mentioned, we're very proud of the work we've been doing with Quartix over now a number of years, and the integration of the data, really the combination of the FleetCheck software system, the fleet management software, and the market-leading telematics solutions that you're using, really gives you the best of both worlds. And I'm going to show you how that side works and how we integrate it. We're going to look at how you control your operating costs. Again, I touched on this at the very beginning. Fleet operating costs are the second largest overhead outside of payroll. But often it's a key challenge for companies to try and understand how they can drill down and look at that. And we're going to give you a guidance into that, and how we can streamline your processes and look to see how we can centralize the information and to give you hopefully a more of a holistic view of what's going on and get rid of that fragmented data. And again, because we're going to be talking about compliance, really I want to look at how we can demonstrate and give you peace of mind on that area. Okay, a little bit more background just on FleetCheck. We are recognised now as one of the UK's leading fleet management software providers, and we're very proud of the recognition we've been having in the most recent years, and you can see we have won a few awards, which is always lovely. We're internet-based, exactly the same as the software you're currently using, and it works in a very similar way as far as usernames and passwords. We recently became accredited for ISO 27001.2017, that's a mouthful. But it's an international standard for data security, and I can assure you, as Quartix do with your data, it is extraordinarily important in your data security areas. And I'm going to cover off a little bit about that and the challenges that you guys now have with GDPR and everything else. I suppose one of the key benefits of FleetCheck, because I designed it for the smaller fleets, in my background, for those of you who do know me, I used to run garages. So I come from the industry. I had 40 years experience in this industry now, and 15 years running garages. I was an authorised examiner for MOT. So I understand the span of the end of the business really well. And one of the key things that I addressed when I started launching FleetCheck all those years ago was to build a system that was easy to use and set up. And again, hopefully when I go through the software with you, you'll recognise that is very much the case. And at the heart of what we're talking about today is how it integrates with the Quartix system and how we can bring that information through. Okay, I've just got a few stats up here that's quite useful for you to understand, again, the sort of makeup of what we're doing and the key areas that we see companies interested in. We have over 800 companies using our software, and that's illustrated by the number of fleets and assets that you can see managed there. Fuel has been one of the key concerns that certainly has come out from a lot of the discussions we've had, and I'll show you in a moment the fuel companies we integrate with. But this for us, when you combine it with the mileage we bring through from telematics, from the Quartix system, we can give you really meaningful MPG analysis, not just giving you consumption figures in the normal way, but what we can do when you drill down into the performance figures, looking at the behavior of perhaps the driver, how they're driving the vehicle, if they're having adverse fuel consumption coming through, then it will highlight fuel theft, because we're looking at physical literage going into the tank. Documentation storage become more and more prevalent, and again, I'll cover that off on the GDPR side. But what we are seeing is a significant interest and uptake now on doing safety checks via mobile phones. And again, I'll cover that off, and you can see here, since we launched this in 2007, we've had a substantial uptake on that side. We're equally proud of the industry leaders and how they have adopted us. Hopefully a lot of you will be familiar with the names. Certainly I know Quartix are very proud to be a gold partner for the Van Excellence program, and we've been working very closely with the FTA now for over 7 years. And they recommend FleetCheck as one of the leading providers of software to help through accreditation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Driving for Better Business, this is a Highways England initiative. We've been working really closely with the FTA and Driving for Better Business to create a free of charge risk assessment for any of you. And if any of you are interested after the call, your account managers can feed this through and we can give you more information. So a really, really worthwhile exercise to go through. And again, when I'm covering off the legals, you'll see the significance of that. For those of you who are FORS accredited, you hopefully may, have heard about FORS FMS. This was launched around 3 months ago. FORS will recognise the challenges that their members have in ensuring that they can build the audit trail and demonstrate to the auditors that they are operating to a national standard. And we were delighted to be selected by them last year, and so FORS FMS is FleetCheck with some additional functionality added. And the really good news for any of the Quartix clients, if you want that added functionality switched on, we can do that for you within the Quartix offering. So you would, for any of you who are FORS, we can switch on that functionality. And I'll finish off on the earned recognition side. For those of you who operate in HGVs, you will be familiar, I'm sure, with what DVSA have launched. Again, this is adoption of looking at the benefits of an FMS platform, and we've been involved in the pilot right the way through accreditation. So again, if any of you are interested in that side, the software platform that you'll be operating with would comply with all those key areas. Okay, I like this slide. We've used this before. I think I touched on this when we did the introduction, that often when we're talking to the SME sector, fleet is just one of the many jobs that they have. And I think the sort of noise and the challenges and the information that you can see coming through, this is just an average day. Now the problem is you can't use the fact that you're ignorant of what you need to do, or you're too busy to do something, or you can't afford to do something. These are key issues. But this prevalence of data, this huge amount of information, fleet management is an extraordinarily difficult job. And our job really is to help. It's compounded by some of the legal challenges, and I think the slide that you can see here, this is just a flavour of some of the legislation that we're all having to deal with. And one of the things I often will talk to some of the smaller fleet operators, they said, does this really apply? And it really does. It doesn't matter whether you're running 5, 50, 500 or even 5,000 vehicles. The rules and regulations apply, and ignorance is no defence. A few of these things, I'll cover off. The Corporate Manslaughter Act, for example, this is the elephant in the room. This is something everybody knows about but don't really want to talk about. I hope to goodness none of you experience this. But the implications for companies if something goes wrong are catastrophic. And we are talking about your business if you were found guilty of any issues to do with health and safety prosecutions, to do with something that caused a serious injury or a fatality. The sentencing council guidelines imply basically that what you have to do and operate as a certain standard, and this would take up to 3 years to go through the courts, and sadly for the companies that have experienced that, they will lose their business. The Health and Safety at Work Act is the one that I think touches every single one of us. This was brought in 1974, and this is really what introduced duty of care. This is a word that's often bounced around and used. But the major difference here is the workplace. The vehicle was defined then as the workplace. So that means any member of staff you've got who drive a vehicle for work, whether you're running with one person driving a vehicle or 1,000 of them, that is their place of work. And that means that you have a duty of care for their welfare and any other road user. Now, any other road user had the unfortunate task of driving through London yesterday morning with the cyclists. All of this, any of these vulnerable road users come into the responsibility of your organisation, and the last thing you want to do is fall foul of the law on that side. The Road Traffic Act is one of the key areas. Again, this brought us in, well, this is the criminal aspect. So here we're talking about license checking. Every single one of you have you have responsibilities there to make sure your drivers are legal. And they're unlike the Health and Safety at Work Act, which is a HSC, is a duty of care issue. This is a criminal offence. So if you have anybody driving for work, you have to be confident they are legal to drive. If they're not insured. And for you, there will be serious fines. Our task is to help companies and to go through this process and to steer you through the maze and what you need to do. Just to add to it, I think we're all I'm sure by the time 25th of May came in, we're all very familiar with GDPR and the implications for this. But this just compounds the pressure on everyone now, because not only do you have to comply with your legal requirements, you've got your data issue management as well. Now, I talked about license checking being one of the key areas that we're seeing that companies are recognizing they have to do something with. More importantly now is, how are they holding these records? Are they in a filing cabinet? Is it photocopies of licenses? Who can see this? Is it secure? And how long do you keep this information for? Now, one of the key benefits of looking at a fleet management software solution, FleetCheck, we can give you that confidence. We can elevate the level of security to a point where you can feel absolutely confident you're complying with your requirements, especially when you're holding very, very important details about your drivers on that basis. Okay, this is some polls that were done fairly recently, and interesting statistics. I quite like looking at some of these statistics, and we're talking here about businesses and challenges the businesses have got. And I will say, over the many, many years I've sat with companies, regardless of their size, a lot of these pains are similar. So what you're experiencing your average day of trying to manage your fleet, almost everyone, I can assure you, suffers the same problems. And this one here, 17%, I think that figure probably is higher actually when we're talking to the companies we're dealing with, are not carrying out safety checks. So this is, are you confident your drivers are carrying out regular checks on the vehicles? And if they are, how are they doing them? Well, majority, or 63% here, are looking at safety checks are being done by paper. This is an onerous task for almost every organisation, not only to make sure that paperwork is circulated, the drivers have got to bring it back, you've got to process information, but it hides those drivers who don't do it. So what a lot of the work then is, it's actually processing this paper. It's a key area, and it's really fundamental to your road safety and how you need to do things, and an area we can help you with. One of the massive benefits of having telematics and the data that you get is you can monitor and manage your drivers and understand basically what they're doing. But when something does go wrong, catastrophically wrong, and a vehicle's involved in an accident, you know, a lot of companies aren't processing this and manage this. Okay, they're reporting it to the insurance company, but they don't have a provision to properly audit this post-accident interviews and how this is done. And we can guide you through what you should be doing on that side. And again, here we can see companies' frequency of accidents. Again, when you combine the valuable telematic data with information about how many points are on the license or their fuel consumption or anything else, we can give a much greater profile for the clients on that side. Okay, so how can we help? I said at the very beginning I'll be covering off some of the legal issues and how that side implications work for yourselves. Let's look at what we do. Well, first thing I will say is spreadsheets are the default go-to that almost everyone we talk to use. It's when we ask the question, how do you manage this? How do you manage this? And often it is on multiple spreadsheets going forwards. But there is a way forward. And what we offer is a very, very simple transition from spreadsheets into an integrated data platform. So I'm not a techie, as I say, I'm an engineer, but I designed FleetCheck really to make not only the process of setup easy, but how you use the software. And I think this slide illustrates really how we can take all the data from the Quartix system, and I'll show you in a second that data stream that we take, and we can combine that with all of the other information we hold. So again, this is this point here where if you have a really robust fleet management software solution, FleetCheck, combine it with your telematic offering, you really have got all the tools that you need to manage your fleet. The three key areas that we bring in, and some of these are just a byproduct. The mileage is a byproduct of the telematic devices that you run, but for us it's an extraordinarily important data stream. Combine that with the driver score information and driver allocation. Again, this can help us enormously, give you a provision and a place to record this information so you can demonstrate the fact you're acting on it as well. And again, I can go through that. I touched on fuel. Fuel, almost with every company we work with, is an area that everybody wants to address. And one of the key things that we can do is we can integrate this information into FleetCheck. So regardless of the fuel companies, this is just an illustration of a few of them we bring in. And we can combine that with the mileage we take through from the Quartix tracker. And with that, we can give you really meaningful MPG analysis. And again, this can not only help with fuel savings, cost savings, we can also help some to profile drivers and identify those drivers that are getting the lowest return. It's not just fuel. We bring in data from basically all known sources that you can imagine. DVLA is probably the one that you would be most familiar with. What does that mean to yourselves? Well, we know when your MOT and road tax is due. So the information, and I'll show you in a second how we display this information to you. So we're looking here to help you yourself as far as your management of the fleet. And FleetCheck really is designed to make that process as seamless as possible. So whether it's license data, we've been talking about license checking, or the FORS data we talked about, or clearly how we bring in the data from the Quartix system. At the heart of FleetCheck itself is a data hub. Okay, one of the unique aspects of the way it works, and I'm just going to highlight this. So I'm conscious that you're just looking at a very small screen at the moment, and you can just see some little bit of traffic lights. Well, today's really just to give you a flavor of how the Quartix system can work and how it can help you. But its unique way it delivers the information really is through its traffic lights. And what you can see in the center of the screen here, I mentioned about we can bring in MOT records, we can bring in service intervals and everything else. We will give you, I call it nicely nagging. If fleet isn't your core job and it's something that you know you need to do, the system itself will, if you're logged into it, it will display the information 1,000 miles or a month before the event. And again, because we pull live mileage every day coming through from your trackers, we'll know for vehicles due for an event based on the mileage. Not only will we know it's MOT and road tax, we can also look at your service intervals, and I'm going to cover that off in a second. But when we do the nicely nagging, it's basically when it goes from 1,000 miles to 500 miles 2 weeks later, you'll have another alert will come through. This is linked to emails. So even if you're not logged into the system itself will prompt you to do something. And for those of you who operate larger fleets and may have multiple depots, you can escalate this up so senior management start getting notification if an event is overdue. Very powerful, very easy, and totally and utterly unique to the way that we work. And this was because the system itself was designed really with the smaller fleets in mind. Okay, this sort of these 6 points now just give you a flavor. We have over 70 standardized alerts in the system. Clearly road tax MOTs we've covered off a few times. Licenses, what we look at, we recommend companies do their license check-in by risk. So here we're saying if you are combining all the information you get from telematics and you've got an information that tells you how many points the driver's got, what the frequency, and we'll tell you when you need to do a license check. And if you want to, we can do it for you as well. I talked about services a second ago. We have an automated data feed from an organization called Autodata, which is what the garages use. It's what I used to use in my past. So what it means, if you are working with multiple different franchised vehicles, we'll know what service intervals those vehicles are on. And when you combine that with the mileage we're pulling through, we can tell you what vehicles need to be done and when they need to be done. The manufacturers in their wisdom have extended service intervals now to a point where you may not be seeing your vehicles may not be going into a garage for over 2 years, 20,000 miles. Personally, I think that's mad. But to comply with your warranty, that's all you need to do. What does it mean? Fundamental change, and this has happened in the last 5 years. The responsibility for the management of your vehicles used to sit with the garages because they were regularly inspecting the vehicles. Now, every single one of you are now responsible to ensure your vehicles are safe. And how do you do that? You make sure the drivers are doing safety checks, and you record any defects they find. Okay, so what I'm going to cover off here is, again, you can see, and again, I'm conscious it's quite small. This is a GIF we put together just to give you a very quick flavor of how the information is displayed, and hopefully you can see it. But on the left-hand side, you can see the number plates. This is your fleet, and you can set this up with multiple different divisions, so you can have a very tailored view depending upon. And this works in a very similar way to how you set up your Quartix account, so you can set up who sees what. And the traffic light alerts on the right-hand side, again, are linked into your vehicle side. Okay, so again, I'll just take 6, and there are a lot more than 6, and some of these I've covered off, but what are we reporting on? Well, clearly, it wouldn't be an FMS system if it wasn't looking after and managing your maintenance regimes for all your vehicles that you've got. Why do you need to do this? Well, if you've got lease vehicles, you need to do it because the lease company will charge you. If you don't do it, clearly there is a duty of care requirement there. You have to do this. You can't have vehicles that aren't being maintained correctly. And managing and the cost of those maintenance, again, we can give you guidance on that. Talked about incidents. These incidents could be relevant to accidents or damage on the vehicle. We have a provision that you can add in your plant machinery, so if you have road legal or non-road legal plant, that can be added in, and we can give you guidance on that side. I've covered the fuel, and clearly defects are fundamental to the management. The app, which we've talked about, is really, I suppose, really the adaptation of smartphones now. More and more companies are looking to see how they can close this loop. I've mentioned about these extended service intervals and the responsibility you've got. It is imperative for you that your drivers are doing these checks, and you get this with your FleetCheck, with the system you get with Quartix. So what do we offer you? Well, you can have customizable checks. So you may have vehicles with roof racks fitted. You may have special checks you want done at certain times of the year and certain times of the month. And as far as we're concerned, you can customize them as you like. Because we're looking at electronic record keeping here, we can give images immediately back to you. So if a driver's found a fault, that information is immediately fed through. And also you can give your drivers access to all of the key contact information that they need. So what happens if they're involved in an accident, if they've got a tyre replacement or windscreen replacement, which can be very powerful, very easy. For those of you who they may want to do ad hoc fuel purchases, they can record that on there, and even mileage if the vehicles haven't got telematics fitted. And I will stress, the whole of your fleet is managed through FleetCheck, and clearly the value you get from your vehicles that are tracked, but this will apply to the whole of your fleet, and again, we can support you with that side. And we can even tell you how long they spend doing it. The drivers themselves will get visibility as well as far as the vehicle's maintenance, so they can see if it's due an MOT and whether they have a London congestion charge, things like that coming through. Okay, so that's the vehicle side, and again, I'm conscious of time today, so I'm going to go through this. So again, here we're looking at, a second ago I showed you how the vehicles are displayed. Well, this is how the drivers are displayed. So you can see where the number plates were on the left-hand side. You've now got drivers' names. And on the right-hand side, you've got the key events there. So this is whether it needs a license check-in or an incident follow-up. And the incident management side of it from our side is quite, it's a very important, and it dovetails neatly to what you're dealing with. So again, I'm just going to pull up half a dozen of these. We've talked about license checks. Medical declarations come through. I don't know how many of you are doing these, but for example, diabetes is a reportable condition that your insurance company should know. Often when we talk to companies and we're saying, are you doing annual medical declarations? The answer is no. The incident management side from drivers is incredibly important when you're looking at what we can do to help you with the fantastic data you're getting through from Quartix. Because what you can do, if you see in a pattern of speeding or excessive cornering and all the data that's being fed through, you have a provision to record this and actually the system will prompt you as to actually go and talk to that driver again. You can record your training. If you're looking at driver training records, or it could be anything. It could be standard training that you may have relevant to working at heights or anything else. If you are FORS regulated, we bring this automatically through the APIs from FORS. But a lot of the smaller fleets that we work with, when you ask them if they have a work-related road risk policy and driver's handbook, the answer is no. So we introduced this a few years ago now. So you get, as part of the license, whether you're only running 5 vehicles, you will have a templated document that you can use. And you can top and tail, and you can use that for yourselves to, again, and this is very, very important with the HSE. Alongside with eyesight check-in, the police are looking at this more carefully now, and it's really easy for you guys to do an eyesight check. You don't have to send to the opticians. It's 21 meters, that's 21.5, but you can put a number plate, set distance away, or you can just wander outside and say, can you read that number plate? You should, and these can be recorded very easily. So a lot of what we're talking about with fleet management is common sense. We've talked a lot about your data, bringing all this information and then centralizing it. Well, obviously the important thing is for you to be able to look at it in one place. So we can give you a dashboard. The dashboard will display the key data, and there's a fairly extensive reporting suite of over 600 reports there which you can use and drill down through on that basis. So again, we can cover that off. For those of you who like, we can show you in far more detail that on that side. Again, I'm just going to pick up on 6 points from here. The relevant value that we can offer on an overview for the company. I've mentioned at the very beginning about documentation storage. Again, when we're looking at your GDPR issues and the reliance on spreadsheets, having centralized information in a secure way is very important. Your contracts, whether it be your R&M contracts or even your contracts with Quartix, you can scan them, upload and store them in the system. Along with your supplier information, insurance details. For those of you who run company cars, we offer the system where we can give you P11D reporting, which can be easily outputted to payroll, and something which a lot of companies, again, as a byproduct of pulling in the mileage, we're looking at your lease vehicles. So if you do lease vehicles, you will have mileage limitations on what you can offer on the lease vehicles. That information, then we can give notification 3-4 months into a 3-year agreement to let you know whether or not the vehicle is exceeding its contract mileage. And again, a lot of companies appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to summarize that, and we're going to just go through a couple of bits and pieces to do with some companies that have been using the system with Quartix. But at the heart of what we're dealing with, really there's 3 key issues. And the first one, I've started off talking about your time today, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to listen to this presentation. But every company we talk to have this issue, and the more we can do to streamline that process, to diminish the reliance on spreadsheets, will help on that side. I've talked about costs. And fleet being the second largest cost outside of payroll, and how we can give you, if you don't, if you can't manage the data, you've got to manage the data to be able to control it. So as far as we're concerned, really it's helped to give you that information so you can manage it and you can measure it on that side. I suppose, but the purpose of this call and the key issues that come up time and time again is compliance. From our side, one of the key areas to help you understand what you need to do, but then give you reassurance and peace of mind that you're doing everything you should be doing. And I think that's really at the heart of what we're looking at. But those 3 points, I would say, covers every single company. So what are we looking to try and do? Again, we've talked about this quite a bit. Really, we'd like to help you say goodbye to your spreadsheets. It's migration away from spreadsheets into a database isn't scary. It's easy, and it's very easy to set up. Because we've been working for a number of years now, and we have literally, scores, thousands and thousands of vehicles that are linked across with Quartix and FleetCheck. It's just one illustration here from one of the clients that have talked about a test. I'm not going to read it out. And we have another one here from Carl Nicholson from Fleet Manager from North Somerset. The fleets we support for Quartix vary from anything from 5 up to several hundred vehicles, but the pains are very similar, and our task really is to support every single one of you to help you go through that side and to see what we can do on that side. Okay, to further help you on this, and we're at the end of the presentation now, and I'm going to in a minute hand back over to Alison, but you can try FleetCheck for free. So obviously you'll need to speak to your account manager on this side, and really the provision for having this within your portfolio of services, you just need to upgrade to the Info Fleet package, which again your account managers will guide you through and how that side works, and we can easily get you set up. Having a chance to evaluate the software properly. And for any of you who've had, from the looking at this and you would like to just see a demonstration of it before committing perhaps to the trial, then we're very happy to arrange a demonstration on that side. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass back to Alison, who there may well be, as you said at the very beginning, some chats and some questions. So we're just going to see quickly while we finish off now if there's any questions that have come through from the attendees. Alison, so have we got anything that's come through that perhaps I might need to answer?
We certainly have, Peter. Great presentation. Thank you for that. I can see that we have a lot of interest this morning. The questions have been rolling in. As you mentioned, we are against the clock, so I think we've got time for about 2 or 3 questions.
Okay, fire away.
One of the questions that's come up a couple of times is, do you only work with the fuel card companies that you showed on the screen?
No, that's a very good question. That does come up a lot, and often companies may have more than one fuel card provider as well. So it's really common for us to either bunkered fuel or multiple providers. So no, as long as we really simply we need to see a CSV file. So if you've got any of you have got your fuel card providers, I can with confidence. As long as they can give you electronic records, we can bring the data in.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question we have is, how long does it take to set up an account?
Okay, this comes up a lot because companies are concerned this is going to be quite a time-consuming undertaking. Whatever method you've currently got and where you keep the data, it's likely to be in spreadsheets. That's been the theme of the discussion. We'll give you a template document, load that in, which is very simple to do, and we'll populate it. We can get an account up and running within 48 hours. We do all the work, so it's very simple. And we go what we call a handover. So when your data has been loaded in, we arrange a time for training, and we would expect to train somebody within an hour. So it doesn't take any longer than an hour to get up to speed, and then you have ongoing support on that side. We've got time for one more. Okay,
great. Well, one of the ones I was going to pose was on training, actually, but you've covered that off nicely. Thank you. Another question I have here is, can I add all of my vehicles onto FleetCheck and not just the ones that are tracked?
Yeah, again, we do realise that although the tracked vehicles give you a lot more information back through the investment you've put into the tracking systems, but if it is cars or something that you do not and you will not be putting on, yes, you can, and obviously it's very, very important for you to have the whole fleet managed, including grey fleet. As though some of you will be familiar with the term grey fleet, this is people using their own vehicle for business use, and we see there's a lot of ignorance about grey fleet, but so basically any vehicles that you operate can be added on, and clearly the ones that have got the Quartix trackers fitted, we can enhance what we can offer there because of the integration of data. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question. I would say, unless there's any other burning questions, I'm conscious of people's time. Perhaps I'll leave it for you, Alison, to close the webinar.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks again, Peter, for your presentation. Hope everyone out there found it useful, and thank you all again for your time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.